When a man betrays you, it's never just his betrayal. It's the doors he opens, the enemies he invites in. My right-hand man didn't just turn his back on me. He gave my rivals the keys to my empire, and they came knocking. The morning after I exiled Marco, I sat in my office watching the sun rise over the East River. I hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. The photographs of Marco's meetings with Tommy Ricci were spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. In our world, evidence like this was a death sentence, but I'd chosen exile instead. Maybe that was my first mistake. Maybe mercy was weakness. Uncle Sal had warned me once that hesitation in this business gets you killed. I'd let Marco walk away breathing, and now I was about to pay the price for that choice. The Lucchese family had always been there, lurking in the shadows of our operation. We'd shared the same streets for decades, controlled overlapping businesses, competed for the same revenue streams. But there had always been an unspoken line, a balance of power maintained through mutual respect and carefully negotiated territories. The five families had learned long ago that all-out war was bad for everyone's business. Dead soldiers meant federal attention. Federal attention meant indictments. So we developed a system, boundaries that everyone understood and mostly respected. Until Marco crossed that line and invited them into my house. 3 days after Marco disappeared, the first sign of trouble arrived. One of my captains, Angelo Russo, called me at 6 in the morning. Angelo ran our operations in the Bronx, handling protection rackets and construction contracts. He was reliable, thorough, never called unless it was urgent. "Boss, we got problems," Angelo said without preamble. "That development deal in Throg's Neck, the one we've been working on for 6 months, it fell through. The contractor suddenly backed out, said he found better financing elsewhere." I sat up straight, fully awake now. "What kind of financing?" "Lucchese financing, boss. Tommy Ricci personally guaranteed the loan. The contractor told me, very apologetically of course, that he couldn't refuse an offer from a family with that kind of reach." Angelo's voice was tight, with barely controlled anger. "They knew about this deal, boss. They knew the exact numbers, the timeline, everything. This wasn't just competition. This was targeted." My grip tightened on the phone. "Anyone else approach you? Any other deals suddenly falling apart?" "Not yet, but word's spreading fast. People are nervous. They're wondering if the Castellano family is losing its grip." That's how it starts in our world. First the whispers, then the doubts, then the sharks circling. Perception is reality, and if people perceived us as weak, we became weak. "Double the security on all our operations," I ordered. "I want eyes everywhere. Any Lucchese soldier comes near our territory, I want to know about it immediately." 2 hours later, the second call came. This time, it was Frankie Numbers DeLuca, my accountant, and one of the smartest men in the organization. Frankie handled the money laundering, the offshore accounts, the complex financial structures that kept our cash flowing and the feds confused. "Vincent, we have a situation," Frankie said, and I could hear the tension in his usually calm voice. 3 of our shipments got hit last night. Newark, Elizabeth, and one coming through the Lincoln Tunnel. Professional jobs, inside information. They knew exactly which trucks to hit and when. My blood ran cold. 3 simultaneous hijackings wasn't coincidence. That required coordination, planning, and detailed intelligence about our operations. How much did we lose? Product value, about $2 million. But it's not about the money, boss. It's about the message. Someone's declaring war, and they're using your own playbook to do it. Marco's playbook. The shipment schedules, the routes, the security protocols. Marco had helped design our entire logistics system. He knew every detail, every vulnerability, and now he'd handed that knowledge to Tommy Ricci, like a gift wrapped in betrayal. "Get everyone to the social club," I said. "Emergency meeting, 1 hour." The Castellanos social club was a modest storefront in Bensonhurst, sandwiched between a bakery and a dry cleaner. Nothing about it suggested power or wealth. No fancy sign, no ostentatious displays. Just a heavy door with a small peephole and enough security cameras to monitor a prison. Inside was different. The main room had a mahogany bar, leather chairs, walls covered in photographs documenting 50 years of family history. This was where we held court, where decisions were made, where soldiers came to pay respect. Within the hour, my key people assembled. Angelo from the Bronx, Frankie with his financial ledgers, Bobby the Shadow Marconi who'd tracked Marco's betrayal, Paulie and Little Dom who'd witnessed Marco's exile, and half a dozen captains who ran our various operations. The room hummed with tension. Everyone had heard about the hijackings by now. Everyone understood what it meant. I stood at the head of the table looking at each face. These were men who'd pledged their loyalty to the Castellano family, who'd made money under our protection, who owed everything to this organization. Now that loyalty was about to be tested. "The Lucchese family is making a move," I said bluntly. "They're using information Marco gave them to target our operations. The hijackings, the lost contracts, it's all coordinated. They're not just testing us, they're trying to take what's ours." "So we hit them back," Angelo said immediately. "Take out a few of their soldiers, remind them who runs this city." "No," my voice was firm. "That's what they want. They want us to start a war we're not prepared for. Marco gave them 3 months' worth of intelligence. They know our routines, our weaknesses, our plans. We'd be fighting blind while they see everything." Bobby leaned forward, his expression serious. "Boss, if we don't respond, we look weak. Every family in New York will think we're vulnerable." "We are vulnerable," I admitted, and the room went silent. Marco's betrayal opened holes in our armor, but that doesn't mean we charge into a fight we can't win. We need to be smart, strategic. I looked around the table. First, we change everything Marco knew. New routes, new schedules, new protocols. Anything he had access to, we scrap and rebuild. Second, we reach out to our allies, the Gambinos, the Colombos. Remind them that an attack on us threatens the balance we've all maintained. Third, we gather intelligence. I want to know everything about Tommy Ricci's operation, his routines, his vulnerabilities, his plans. Frankie nodded slowly. "You're planning a counterattack. I'm planning survival first, revenge second. We shore up our defenses, then we strike back. But we do it smart, not emotional." Over the next 2 weeks, we worked systematically to plug the holes Marco had created. New shipment routes were established, using roads and warehouses he'd never seen. Security protocols were completely overhauled, with new codes and procedures known only to a select few. I personally vetted every soldier, every associate, looking for any sign of divided loyalty or suspicious behavior. Trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford. But the Lucchese family wasn't idle. They continued hitting our operations with surgical precision, always knowing just where to strike for maximum damage. A gambling operation in Queens got raided, and somehow the police knew exactly which night we'd be moving the most cash. A union negotiation we'd been working on for months suddenly fell apart when the union boss received a better offer from Lucchese-controlled companies. A restaurant we used for money laundering got shut down by the health department on violations that appeared overnight. They were dismantling my empire piece by piece, using Marco's knowledge like a roadmap to our destruction, and I couldn't stop it because I was always one step behind, reacting instead of acting. The frustration was eating me alive. Every hit felt personal, every loss a reminder of Marco's betrayal. But I kept my anger controlled, my decisions calculated. Emotion got people killed in this business. The breaking point came on a Friday in late November. I was meeting with Carmine Gambino, head of one of the other major families, trying to shore up alliances before things got worse. Carmine was old school, respected, powerful. His family controlled the docks and several major unions. An alliance with him would send a message that the Castellanos still had friends. We met at a seafood restaurant in Little Italy, neutral territory where business could be conducted without suspicion. Carmine was in his 70s, gray-haired and distinguished, wearing an immaculate suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. We exchanged pleasantries, ordered wine and pasta, maintained the civilized facade our world required. "Vincent, I'm going to be direct with you," Carmine said once the waiter left. "The Lucchese family approached me last week. They wanted to know where I stood regarding the current difficulties between your families." My stomach tightened. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them that the Gambino family honors its relationships and doesn't involve itself in disputes between others without cause." He paused, swirling wine in his glass. "But I also told them that business is business. If one family shows weakness, if territories become vulnerable, well, nature abhors a vacuum." The message was clear. He was staying neutral, but that neutrality had a shelf life. If I couldn't demonstrate strength soon, even my allies would start picking at the carcass. "I appreciate your honesty, Carmine." "Vincent, let me give you some advice from an old man who survived 50 years in this life." He leaned forward, his voice low. "Marco's betrayal hurt you, but it hurt your reputation more. People are wondering if Vincent Castellano can still lead, if he's still the man his father raised. You need to make a statement. Something bold, something that reminds everyone why the Castellano name still means something." "What kind of statement?" "The kind that makes the Lucchese family regret starting this fight. The kind that makes Marco regret his betrayal from whatever hole he's hiding in." Carmine's eyes were hard as diamonds. "You want my alliance? Prove you're worth allying with? Show me you're not going to fold." I drove back to Bensonhurst with Carmine's words echoing in my head. He was right, and I hated that he was right. Defense wasn't enough. Survival wasn't enough. I needed to strike back, needed to show that the Castellano family was still dangerous, still worthy of respect and fear. But how do you fight an enemy who knows all your moves before you make them? The answer came from an unexpected source. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, paranoid about wiretaps and surveillance, but something made me pick up. "Vincent Castellano?" The voice was unfamiliar, male, careful. "Who's asking?" "My name doesn't matter. What matters is information I have about Tommy Ricci and your former associate Marco Santino." My pulse quickened. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow night, Prospect Park, near the band shell, 10 p.m. come alone, or I walk away and you never hear from me again." The line went dead before I could respond. Every instinct screamed trap. Anonymous caller, isolated location, suspicious timing. But I'd been backed into a corner, and desperate men take desperate chances. I called Bobby. "I need you to do surveillance tomorrow night, Prospect Park. Someone's offering information about Marco and the Lucchese family. Could be a trap, could be legitimate. Either way, I need you watching my back." "Boss, this is exactly how people get whacked. Unknown caller, public park at night?" "I know, but I'm out of options, Bobby. Set up a perimeter, keep your distance, but be ready to move if things go wrong." The next night, I drove to Prospect Park with 2 guns and enough paranoia to fill a stadium. November in Brooklyn meant the park was mostly empty after dark. Just a few joggers and dog walkers who cleared out as evening deepened into night. The band shell was a curved concrete structure near the park's main entrance, partially hidden by trees that had lost their leaves for winter. I arrived 15 minutes early, parking several blocks away and walking in on foot. Bobby was somewhere in the shadows with his team, invisible but present. I positioned myself near the band shell where I could see anyone approaching, my hand resting casually near my gun. At exactly 10 p.m., a figure emerged from the darkness. He was medium height, slim build, wearing a dark coat and a baseball cap pulled low. As he got closer, I recognized him with shock. It was Gino Marino, one of Marco's oldest friends and a soldier in my organization. Gino had worked with Marco for years, handling collections and enforcement in Marco's territory. I'd assumed his loyalty died with Marco's exile, that he'd either left the family or was feeding information to the Lucchese alongside his mentor. "Gino?" I kept my voice neutral, my hand still near my weapon. "This better be good." "Boss, I know how this looks," Gino said quickly, stopping a respectful distance away with his hands visible. "Marco and I were tight. Everyone knows that. When you exiled him, people assumed I'd follow. Some of our crew did follow him, but I didn't. Why should I believe you?" "Because I've been working for you the whole time, boss. Staying close to the Lucchese family, pretending to be sympathetic to Marco's side, gathering intelligence." He pulled an envelope from his coat slowly, carefully. "I've been feeding Marco false information while collecting real intel on what they're planning. It's all in here." I took the envelope, opened it while keeping my eyes on Gino. Inside were photographs, documents, notes in Gino's handwriting, meetings between Tommy Ricci and Marco, plans for future attacks on Castellano operations, financial records showing how the Lucchese family was using Marco's information, a timeline of their strategy to dismantle my organization piece by piece over the next 6 months. "Why the secret meeting?" I asked. "Why not just bring this to the club?" "Because there's more, boss. Something you need to hear in person." Gino's expression was grim. Marco's not just working with the Lucchese family, he's planning to testify. The feds have been building a RICO case for 2 years, and Marco's agreed to be their star witness. He's providing evidence about the whole organization, not just you, not just the Castellanos. The entire 5-family structure. He's going to bring down everyone. The magnitude of that betrayal hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd known Marco was meeting with lawyers, known he was considering witness protection, but I'd assumed it was about saving himself. I hadn't realized he was planning to destroy the entire ecosystem we'd all operated in for decades. "When?" He's scheduled to meet with federal prosecutors in 3 weeks. Once he officially flips, once he's in protective custody, it's over. They'll use his testimony to indict everyone, freeze all assets, shut down operations across the city. Gino stepped closer. Boss, this isn't just about your family anymore. This is about survival for everyone in our world. I processed the information rapidly, my mind racing through implications and strategies. If Marco testified, the resulting indictments would cascade through every family in New York. Decades of carefully built power would collapse overnight. Soldiers would flip to save themselves, creating a domino effect of betrayal and prosecution. The 5 families as we knew them would cease to exist. What do you want from me, Gino? Permission to handle this permanently. Marco's living in a safe house in Westchester, protected by Lucchese soldiers, but not yet in federal custody. I can get to him. I can make sure he never makes it to that meeting with prosecutors. Gino's eyes were hard. But I need your authorization. I need to know you're willing to do what's necessary. There it was. The choice I'd been avoiding since the moment I exiled Marco. I'd shown mercy because part of me still remembered the friend he'd been, the brother who'd stood beside me through wars and victories. But mercy had gotten me 3 weeks of attacks, losses, and humiliation. Mercy had brought me to this point where my entire organization teetered on the edge of destruction. If I authorize this, I said carefully, there's no going back. This becomes a war, not just with the Lucchese family, but potentially with the feds if they trace anything back to us. With respect, boss, we're already at war. The Lucchese family declared it the moment they started using Marco's information. And the feds? They've been at war with us for decades. The only question is whether we fight back or roll over and die. I thought about Carmine's words, about making a statement, about proving the Castellano family was still worthy of respect and fear. I thought about my father, about what he would do in this situation. He'd taught me that loyalty was everything, but he'd also taught me that survival required hard decisions. Sometimes mercy was strength, but sometimes it was weakness. And in this moment, with my empire crumbling and my enemies circling, mercy felt like suicide. Do it, I said finally, but make it clean. No witnesses, no evidence trail, nothing that leads back to us or gives the feds ammunition. I locked eyes with Gino. And Gino, if this is a setup, if you're playing me, understand that I will find you. There's no hole deep enough, no protection good enough to save you. I understand, boss. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this. Marco was my friend too, but he chose his path, and now he has to walk it to the end. Gino disappeared into the darkness as silently as he'd arrived. I stood alone by the band shell for a long moment, feeling the weight of what I'd just authorized. I'd crossed a line tonight, moved from defense to offense, from mercy to vengeance. There would be consequences for this choice, ripples I couldn't yet predict. But in our world, sometimes you have to become the monster to survive among monsters. Sometimes loyalty demands blood. I called Tommy Ricci the next morning from a burner phone, requesting a sit-down. Neutral ground, minimal security, just the two bosses talking business like civilized men. Tommy agreed immediately, probably thinking I was ready to capitulate, ready to negotiate my surrender. We met at a restaurant in Staten Island, a place neither family controlled. The dining room was empty except for us and our bodyguards who waited outside per the agreement. Tommy sat across from me, smiling like a man who'd already won. He was younger than me by a decade, ambitious and ruthless, with slicked back hair and expensive taste in suits. "Vincent, I'm glad you called," Tommy said smoothly. "I was hoping we could resolve our difficulties before things got too unpleasant." "Unpleasant," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. That's an interesting way to describe systematically destroying my operations. Business is competitive, you know that. When opportunities present themselves, smart men capitalize on them. He sipped his espresso. "Your former associate provided certain insights that have proven valuable. But this doesn't have to continue. There's a way forward that benefits both our families." "Really? Tell me about this way forward." Tommy leaned back, completely comfortable, completely confident. "You're a reasonable man, Vincent. You understand that the old ways, the old territories, they don't work anymore. The city's changing. Business is global now. We need to consolidate, streamline, eliminate redundancies." He gestured casually. "Your family's been in decline since your father died. Everyone sees it. You're spread too thin, your captains are aging out, you're vulnerable. My offer is simple. Merge our operations. You keep your title, your respect, but the Lucchese family handles the real work. You essentially become a figurehead, collecting tribute while we run the business." I studied him across the table, this young, ambitious punk who thought he could take what 4 generations of Castellanos had built. "And if I refuse this generous offer?" "Then we continue what we've been doing. Your operations collapse piece by piece. Your soldiers start flipping to us or the feds. Within 6 months, the Castellano family is history, and I take your territory anyway. But in that scenario, you get nothing. No title, no respect, probably no freedom once Marco finishes testifying." Tommy's smile widened. "Join us, or be buried under us. Those are your options." I kept my voice calm, controlled, even though rage burned in my chest. "You think betrayal makes you strong? It makes you weak. Because loyalty, real loyalty, is what builds empires. You're building a house on sand, Tommy, and sand doesn't hold when storms come." The room went silent. Tommy's smile faded slightly. "That sounds like a refusal." "That's exactly what it is." Tommy's bodyguards moved to the door, their hands hovering near weapons. My own soldiers did the same. The tension in that room could have cut glass. "You're making a mistake, Vincent, a fatal mistake." "Maybe, but I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees serving a punk like you." It wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a declaration of war. As I stood to leave, Tommy called after me. "Your pride is going to destroy you, Castellano, and when it does, I'll be there to pick up the piece." I walked out of that restaurant knowing violence was inevitable. There would be no peaceful resolution, no compromise. One of our families would survive this conflict, and one would fall. The only question was which one had the will to do what was necessary. As my driver navigated through Staten Island traffic, my phone buzzed. A text from Gino, just 2 words. "It's done." Marco was dead. The man who'd been my right hand, my brother, my betrayer, gone, eliminated before he could testify and bring down the entire criminal underworld of New York. I felt no satisfaction in his death, no triumph, just a cold, hollow feeling, and the knowledge that I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. But I'd made my choice, and now I'd have to live with the consequences, whatever they might be. The war with the Lucchese family was officially on, and only one of us would survive it. This was the beginning of a war that would test every rule, every bond, every ounce of loyalty I had left, If you want to hear how I fought back and the code I broke to survive, stay with Voxnarratio. The family story continues.